Welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Jeanette Richardson, and today our guests are Major Nelson De La Verge. He's the Corps Officer, and Nancy Sudzik, she's the Homeless Service Director for the Salvation Army. Our topic today is service from prevention to permanent housing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting us today.
Now, please tell us briefly about yourselves and how you became involved in working with the homeless persons at the Salvation Army.
Well, I've been with the Salvation Army for over 34 years as a Salvation Army officer, and so it's become something I just like to do and participate in.
And Nancy?
A colleague of mine was working for the Salvation Army as the shelter director and contacted me. She had an opening as a social worker in the homeless clinic, the medical clinic, and offered me the position. And I have a passion for the homeless and making sure that they had medical care. And I've been there since 1999.
99.
Mm-hmm.
So please tell us about the Salvation Army's mission.
Well, the Salvation Army's mission is to meet the basic needs of human basic needs. William Booth, from the very beginning, that was his mission, what he was called to do. He was a Methodist minister, and finding the homeless under bridges and things like that. He wanted to get them involved, get them out of the gutters and bring them back to the community. And doing so, he brought them to the church, and the church kind of shunned them for a while. And that's how the Salvation Army really began, is by him meeting basic needs of those less fortunate than he.
Well, talk to us about the homelessness in the Milwaukee area and Waukesha.
There are many, many people that are homeless in the city of Milwaukee, men, women, and families. And even within the shelter system that's set up in Milwaukee, there aren't enough shelter beds for all the people that are homeless. We are always at capacity at Salvation Army. So we say we're 120 men, women, and families, and at any given time we probably have 30, 35 children running around the shelter. So there's never this opening, it's every day at capacity. So the demand for shelter is very high.
Well, is there a difference between Milwaukee and Waukesha?
There is a little bit of difference. At the Waukesha Salvation Army, we only house men, and we have 50 beds for men only, and so that's what we deal with, because there's other shelters, a few other shelters in Waukesha County that handle women and children. So our basic goal is to meet the needs for the men in our community. We're the largest men's shelter in Waukesha County.
What are some of the causes of homelessness?
Well, there's many causes for homelessness. It could be employment, it could be illness, it could be, drug and alcohol. There's just a lot of different things that are involved in homelessness. Sometimes it's just that there's just no housing available. And so people move into the community, can't find the housing they need, and they end up being on the streets.
I also add with that is the lack of education, untreated or undiagnosed mental health. We see that in the shelter system every day. Lack of, when we say employment for people who would be at an entry level, transportation, and health.
Right. Would you say that there's a lot of misconceptions about people who are homeless from people from the other side and how they view them?
I would say yes. I would say yes, because most people will see a homeless person and think they're lazy, or they're a drug addict or an alcoholic or whatever, and that's not necessarily true. It's just that they got in a situation that they haven't quite been able to get out of because of their job situation. You know, you got the entry-level jobs are not going to pay for rent, utilities, and everything that involves a home. So that's the situation, and so the folks that you see that are in shelters, or that you see upon the street that are homeless, are not wanting to be there necessarily. It's just from their circumstances that has caused that. And so many of them are very intelligent people, yes, and have the ability. They're just not being able to find the positions that meet their needs.
Is there a loss of dignity a lot of times in these cases?
I believe so. I believe that's very true. Once you get to a place where you cannot function on your own, and you have to ask for help. Nobody likes to ask for help.
You're right.
We don't like to ask for help. We talked earlier about how when we're short, we can't reach the top shelf,
Right.
and you don't want to ask for help, in those kinds of situations. And yeah, their dignity somewhat becomes void.
Could you tell us how you provide services, and what are some of the things you do to help prevent them from going back to being homeless?
So I can speak to that because we have a good success rate at the Salvation Army.
Great.
So upon coming into the shelter, you are assigned a social worker. And at that point, the social worker sits down and we start to talk about all topics that have kept you homeless and what is going on. So, if you haven't had medical care, we have a medical clinic on site at the emergency lodge, and let's say it's your high blood pressure, and you never signed up for insurance, and for some reason everything seems to be in disarray and you can't get that benefit. We're able to help you get your medical situation under control. If you need mental health services, we have a mental health counselor on site who is a very busy woman and always makes time to see you. We'll address your employment issues. With that being said, we partner with United Way, and we have an employment person on site who meets with each individual who is interested and wants to work. Because the people in the shelter want to work. They just can't find that job.
Right.
Or they don't have the transportation to get to the job. Well, at Salvation Army, they make that all happen so that if you get started, we're going to provide bus tickets for you to get to work. And then there's that teaching lesson that once you get your paycheck, you buy your bus pass, because that'll be something that you'll do afterward. If you need clothing, we're able to provide vouchers for them to go to the thrift store and get clothing that they need. So, if you need to be on Social Security, then we start that process and we do the advocacy for it. If you're at a hearing stage, we know the lawyers to contact to connect you. So it's a holistic approach, and we see a lot of successes. We see many people go into permanent housing. Salvation Army has a permanent housing program called Roots. It's always filled to capacities, so then we have to go look elsewhere. But we do find that.
Many of the things that Milwaukee has, Waukesha does not have. However, we work with other agencies that provide many of those components.
You have a lot of partnerships.
So we have partnerships that deal with that. We also are part of United Way and other organizations, so we are part of committees and things like that to meet all these needs that are out there. But one of the needs that we are finding with the homeless and with the general public is the need of spiritual care.
Right.
Which is very important to some of these folks that feel like nobody cares, I can't call upon anybody, and so they don't realize what their inner person is and their spiritual care. So the Salvation Army, because we are a church ourselves, we have that opportunity to present the gospel to them and show them that God does care about them.
Yes.
And there's many scriptures in the Bible that tell how we meet those needs, meeting those basic needs. Jesus himself was homeless. He traveled all those years, and meeting his basic needs was important, and how people came to meet his needs, and then how we as Christians and believers meet needs by doing the service that God has given us the ability to do that. And so that's an important component to the Salvation Army. That's why William Booth began to do it, because he saw there was a need there, and it was a physical need. So he met the physical need, and then he decided felt that he needed to deal with the heart need as well to get them to the place that they needed to be.
Can you go just in a little depth when you were saying how the organization was started is because the church wasn't meeting the need? What are some things you can say to the Christians on how we can be more involved, and what should be our response and our attitude towards the homeless?
Well, I believe that we all, as Christians, as believers, have that duty to reach out to those that are less fortunate than us. I mean, scriptures talk about if we have a cloak, we have 2 cloaks, give one up, give it to that person. You know, sometimes we have to walk in their shoes
Right.
to feel what they're going through. We have to be with them, and that's important for us to understand that. I mean, the scriptures are written for us to learn from
Right.
and to obey and to do those things. And so it is important for us all as believers to reach out to those less fortunate, to those that are calling upon someone
Right.
to come and help them. And we, as believers, have been called to do that as believers.
Right.
And so that's what we need to do. Let's just do it. Doesn't matter what denomination you are,
Exactly.
where you're from, we have a calling to serve right here where we are right now.
And love has no denomination, right?
That's right.
And just it's more of us to stop judging and help.
Exactly.
Well, we would love to hear some success stories. Could you please share some success stories? I'm sure you have many.
At the emergency lodge, we had a gentleman who was referred to us from another shelter because we're a 24-hour shelter. And this particular man came to me to talk to me. He had been working 3rd shift and needed a place to sleep at night because many people have to leave during the day. So this man came to tell me what was going on, and he has liver cancer. And he's being treated for that. And they felt that this would be a better situation for him is to be at the Salvation Army. So the gentleman came in and continued moving along with all the care and the treatment plan. And this past Christmas, our divisional commander, Major Stephen Merritt, and Major Christine Merritt, and some other people from DHQ came down to the shelter to have this Christmas party with us. And Basil came up to me and asked me if I could ask the major to pray for him. It was so, when I went to get Major Merritt and he prayed for him and all the residents are there and we're all standing there, it was so beautiful, but this gave that man hope. I think that's what we're about.
Yeah. That's exactly what we're about and what we do. We've had many success stories in our facility as well, from a young man who lived with his grandmother and was going to school and everything, and then his grandmother passed away. And he had no place to go. He was 18, so we were able to take him in and discovered, he had nobody else. We couldn't find any family. We couldn't find anybody that would take him as a child, So we dealt with that. We worked with him. We asked him what he thought he wanted to do. He decided he wanted to go to the military. So we got him hooked up with the right people for recruiting, and now that's where he's at. He's entered into boot camp and doing well. So that's young people, but we also have older folks that come to us that can't get that job, because they're over 50 or 55, and it's really hard to get jobs at that age. And he had some other issues, and we just kind of did what was mentioned earlier, is went through the process, and we were able to get him on SSI, and he is now in his own place. He's able to provide for himself, and these are stories that continually happen, not just with the men in our shelter, but with the families in the shelters and other shelters as well, because we're working together to meet the basic needs, and then again, like I said, meet the heart need along with that, because it's all important.
Well, I just want to thank both of you for being our guests, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us, Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Jeanette Richardson, and our guest today was Major Nelson DeLaverge. He's the Corps officer, and Nancy Sudzik, the Homeless Service Director for the Salvation Army. Our topic was services from prevention to permanent housing. Thanks again for joining us.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Oh, hey, bud.
Oh.
Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
It's a school night. With Gary and Todd?
Yeah?
Not sure about those two. I've been meaning to ask you. This is tougher than I thought. Is there any drinking going on in this crowd?
No?
I hope not, because alcohol can lead you to say things and do things that you really wish you hadn't. Isn't this what you're supposed to say?
I know.
So if any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't. I'd do anything to keep you safe.
Okay, I will.
I hope this is working.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you.
Brian.
Yeah?
So start the conversation even before they're teenagers.
Good idea.
For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Jeanette Richardson, and today our guest is Nancy Sudzik. She's the Homeless Service Director for the Salvation Army of Milwaukee County. Our topic is health care for the homeless. Thank you for joining us, Nancy.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, just let me know how a lot of people are homeless and are affected by the health care component.
Traditionally, we look at the homeless population as a group of people that are in poverty. But many people work. And so what happens for healthcare is applying for Title 19. So if you're a family, you get insured and your kids are insured, and if you're not working at all, you're going to be insured with Title 19. And if you're working and you go over this limit, which is a little over $1,000, you may lose your insurance. So everyone is very mindful, even when they're working, not to have an income, a gross income higher than that. So healthcare for the population we serve is important because they suffer from many, many chronic health conditions like diabetes and asthma, high blood pressure. So medical care is very important.
So how does it really complicate the ability to get health care when you're homeless?
Making appointments. If you're homeless, it's very difficult to sometimes know what time it is to get to your appointment, and transportation for the appointment are probably the two biggest barriers of getting medical care when you're talking on that level. But then once you have the medical care, and let's say you're an asthmatic and you need your inhaler or high blood pressure pills, it's also having a copay to pay for your medication. So keeping on top of your health sometimes can be difficult, especially when they're trying to contact you by phone or by mail, and you don't have a mailing address.
Right.
And then if your phone runs out of minutes and you have a government phone, they really can't get a hold of you. So sometimes medical care, there's a barrier because of their homelessness.
Is there a high number of people who are homeless that struggle with mental illness?
Yes. The untreated or the undiagnosed mentally ill, and that's probably, if I have to say, that's what keeps them homeless. And they need to get in to see a professional in order to be diagnosed by the psychiatrist and then for counseling. And they need the medication to stabilize. But if you're aware of the shortage of psychiatrists to actually prescribe. That is a barrier also. And it's limiting. You know, to get an appointment, you might ask for an appointment and then it's 2 or 3 months out. So the mentally ill really struggle, I'd say, in the city of Milwaukee to get care. It's there, but it's not readily accessible, and that's what you need.
Is there some time of struggle finding just enough facilities to help people with mental illness because there's such a problem?
I think the degree of mental health with the homeless population is extremely high. And so getting treatment due to not having enough providers, the wait is long, they're overbooked. And if you miss that appointment, you may not get back in for another 6 to 8 weeks. It just happens like that. And so the person who's in dire needs may decompensate more and may end up out at mental health complex. That can happen, or one of the Dewey Center or Rogers, because their mental health takes such control of their life that this is where they're diverted to, and then can get treatment. But trying to get in is difficult.
Can you tell us about the homeless medical clinic?
Salvation Army provides a clinic that is free for anyone who's coming in for services. We traditionally treat those who are uninsured because there are many people out there that don't have insurance. And so the care and the medicine that they might need is all free. We partner with Aurora Healthcare for that. But anyone who comes in will see a physician, a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, and if they need labs, if they need co-pays, if for something that they need to buy over the counter, whatever it is, the Salvation Army Medical Clinic is going to provide that. So much so is if you need transportation to go pick up your medication, we're going to do that too.
With this population, do you deal a lot with chronic illnesses?
Yes. The 4 that we deal with are asthma, high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease.
And can you just talk about some of the challenges when people have these illnesses on getting the support that they need?
Well, for the patient that comes into the clinic, for instance, if you have high blood pressure and it's not treated and it's not maintained, you're at risk for a stroke. And that can change. That's a life-changing event. So to keep your blood pressure under control, same for people who suffer with asthma.
Right.
If you're trying to work and your asthma is not under control, it would make it difficult. Same for diabetes, for all the things I'm talking about. They're all chronic diseases that need to be addressed, and they're particularly high with the homeless population.
What is respite care, and what do you offer with that program?
So the respite program, which is the only respite program in the city of Milwaukee within the shelter system, started in 1993 and continues strong here at 2017. These are for individuals who are in the hospital and need to be discharged, whether they may have had surgery, some type of procedure, and they have nowhere to go. The hospitals in the Milwaukee area contact Salvation Army and request assistance in getting a bed in the respite program. Once you're in the respite program, the best part of this is we have Nurse Terry Shamasco, who has been with us for maybe the last 10 years, because she worked for the Red Cross, and she provides that nursing care that we have at the shelter every single day. So anyone who comes in, they have to follow up with all their medical procedures or follow-up appointments. Terry takes care of making sure that everything is going well, their blood pressure, their sutures are clean. Whatever is needed, Nurse Terry is there to take care of. And so having a nurse on site and knowing that we have providers that assist with the individuals we have make the respite program one of the strongest programs in the city. The demand is there every single day.
Wow.
And then they transition out of respite many times into shelter, but then into housing.
What do you feel like as Christians our responsibility should be towards the homeless and those that are ill?
To be kind, to be caring, to be empathetic, and provide hope to these individuals. You have no idea of what they have gone through. Homelessness is one piece, and what was the cause of the homelessness can often be very traumatic events in their life.
Right.
And they're just making it day by day. And the last thing they need to be is judged.
Yes.
And to open your arms to them. And even if it's just smiling that at someone that you
Right.
think might be homeless, is probably a wonderful gift to give every single day.
Well, he did say that we were supposed to know his disciples by their love. And isn't love just a key to so much?
It is. And being at the emergency lodge with Captain Christina, who is our pastoral care person, and making sure that she makes an effort to meet with every respite person who's going through some type of medical issue, and to provide that guidance and that hope and to know that God is with them.
Yes.
It changes the whole dynamic of that person and their attitude.
And just talk to us about some of the misconceptions that people have in regards to people who are homeless and ill.
The misconceptions is that everybody is a drug addict, everybody is an alcoholic, everybody is a criminal, are probably the three that I hear of most often. And when you get to know the people, that's not their story. You know, they are people who have been trying and trying to fit in with society, but due to their homelessness, they're struggling. And all of us in our life have had periods of time where we struggle.
Right.
So have they, with more barriers. And anybody can be homeless, because we have had physicians, we've had other doctors, nurses, a physicist. I can't even tell you how many professional people have had a mental break and end up in the shelter.
Wow. So we have to really lean on grace and mercy and show people, you know, the way we would want to be treated in that situation.
And that's exactly it. Treat them as you would want to be treated. They're human beings. They have feelings.
Yes.
And I think we lose sight of that.
Nancy, thank you so much for joining us and for what you do.
Thank you for having Salvation Army here today.
And thank you for watching Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Jeanette Richardson. Today, our guest was Nancy Sudzik. She's the Homeless Service Director for the Salvation Army, Milwaukee County. Our topic was health care for the homeless. Thanks again for watching.